You are watching the New American Media.
You are listening to The Unhappy Hour Sports Radio Show on the newamericanmedia.com.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for sticking around with us. This is our very special edition of The Unhappy Hour. We're talking about the NBA draft. We have gone through picks 1 through 20 with NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris, and we're going to pick it up at 20. We just talked about Evan Fournier, so we'll just go to 21. Boston, Jared Sullinger. That is how far he had fallen from all the way. I think he was a lottery pick last year had he come out, and then questions with his back and his health. He slides to Boston, who has an aging big three and big four, whatever you want to call it. What do you think about Jared Sullinger going over to Boston now?
I think they got a fantastic pick in Sullinger. I'm not saying this, I've never been one to, be high on the Ohio State guys. It's never, I wasn't for the Cavs drafting David Lighty last year. But I think Sullinger, in my opinion, don't forget, this is a guy who would have been a top 5 pick in last year's draft.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent value there. Yeah, he has some medical concerns. The guy, I think he missed, maybe 2 or 3 games at Ohio State this year. He didn't miss very many games. The only significant game he missed was the Kansas game. And he can score in the low post. He's productive, and the things he doesn't do well, he's not good off the pick and roll. But obviously, if Kevin Garnett's there another year, he can learn from Garnett. I think Sullinger's a perfect fit with the Celtics, especially having a point guard like Rajon Rondo there. Love the pick over there for Boston. Absolutely, I think it's a great pick for Boston.
I would concur with that 100%.
I think they're very lucky to have Sullinger. I think he's a top 10 talent. Or at least, I think he really is a top 10 talent. And they got him later, with a late pick. I don't think Boston could have done any better.
Well, you got to take some flyers when you're in the 20s like that. You're looking for that high upside. You might have a few more misses, but if you can, depending on what you need, if you just want a 3-point specialist or if you're looking for some defense, whatever. But I like the fact that you're going after Sullinger. I would have loved to see him on a Cavs uniform, just because I watched him play enough to know that he's a gamer. He's a good fit with especially any elite point guard who's a good passing point guard. Like a Kyrie Irving or Rajon Rondo, or even a Steve Nash. Sullinger would be great in any of those systems. With any of those players as point guards. I think it's the fact that he's going to have guys with a lot of experience around him, like a guy like Paul Pierce. He's got Avery Bradley. He's got Rondo. Brandon Bass. Honestly, I see Boston probably going out and maybe trying to trade Brandon Bass because he and Sullinger are the same position. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Boston. It all depends if Kevin Garnett comes back or not. But I think Boston got younger in the process without losing a step. I think they made a really nice move in Sullinger. Now with Fab Melo, center from Syracuse.
He reminds me a lot of, he's not going to do much at the offensive end, kind of like a Kendrick Perkins type, isn't going to do much on the offensive end. But he's going to block shots. I don't think he's an incredible rebounder. Especially he played, I think it was like 26 minutes a game, only averaged 7.5 rebounds. But, he's around the rim. Like I said, he's not going to do much offensively for you. He's more of a project. But he's going to block shots, and and Boston desperately needed a center. So that's another good fit for Boston. They really need a center, and that fit a need.
Yeah, it's hard looking at those back-to-backs 21-22 and having a problem with it. So then you got Atlanta. Moving over there. John Jenkins, I guess, was this?
From Vanderbilt. John Jenkins is an excellent shooter. He's an excellent shooter, and I like that pick too.
Would this have been part of Danny Ferry's doing? Was he there in time?
Ferry is there in time. Yes, it was Danny Ferry's doing. Yes, he is in charge. He has complete control of the organization. That was a Danny Ferry pick.
Okay, I'd be interested to follow.
And I don't know. I think it was a solid pick by Danny Ferry. They got a great shooter, and that's Atlanta needs one. It's also is Atlanta Atlanta could be on the move. Like I said, Atlanta's been stuck in the same position now for about 5 years, where they're constantly that high 40s win team, low 50s win team who gets eliminated in the first or the second round of the playoffs every single year. Some changes need to be made, whether it's trading Josh Smith. Do you try to bring in Pau Gasol in the offseason this year and try to work out some kind of Josh Smith trade? It's always possible. I don't know if it'll happen. The Lakers' willingness to move Gasol at this point seems like something could happen. And Danny Ferry's not going to stand pat with the current roster. I can tell you that. He's going to attempt to make a move.
Well, I'm going to be interested.
He's always been a very active trade partner, and you know, Danny Ferry, he's always moving players around all the time. So
Yeah,
I could,
that is
you know,
true.
he's not afraid to make a big deal either. So I could definitely see him in Atlanta making some big moves.
Well, I'm interested to follow it, especially after we got that fantastic comment on our YouTube site, the youtube.com/the New American Media, where we've just been going back and forth. This kid is battling me, just tearing into about how lousy the Cavs organization is, and how lousy, you know, LeBron just had to bail. It was such a loser franchise, and they'll never be any good.
You know what? He doesn't know what he's talking about. Until you're in the business, you don't. You know, that's the problem. Is until people are in the business, you know, what people read in the media isn't always true. A lot of the media is, you know, it's almost a complete joke. You know, I hate to say it. You know, a lot of it is. You know, but you know, and I learned that my freshman year down at the University of Arizona. I learned that. You know, when there were a couple stories ran about a couple players, I remember in the student newspaper, and I'm looking at like, this isn't what happened. You know, and my boss told me, he goes, don't ever believe what you see in the media. He goes, that's why I don't read the paper. And, you know, and a lot of my bosses said that. They said, that's why we don't read the paper. Nothing's true. You can't believe what you see.
Well,
and, you know, I mean, I heard speculation on Lute Olson for 3 years when I was, you know, when I was down there. You know, well, what happened with Lute Olson? Why is Lute leaving? I knew the whole time what was going on. You know, everybody did in the athletic office. You know, we were all sworn to secrecy. You didn't say anything what was going on. You know, and it was a secret. It was, you know, people are, you know, maybe the guy has Alzheimer's. Maybe he has this. You know, like, no, he doesn't. You know, and I just kept mum on the issue. I just told people, I said, I have no clue what's going on. You know, we all knew what was going on down there, and it was just you didn't say anything. You know, as the media tries to speculate a lot of the times, and, you know, a lot of times they miss. You know, it just happens.
Well, I'm rooting for Danny Ferry to do good. I mean, he had a rough situation. It was always, you know, improve the team now, improve the team now, improve the team now. You got to make a big move, or else we're going to lose
Gilbert
LeBron.
Gilbert won to win. I don't think the Cavs are a bad organization at all. I think there's some terrible organizations out there. I'm not going to name any of them, but there are some bad organizations
you may
out there.
you may end up cleaning up one of their messes one day. You don't want to leave a paper
Exactly.
trail.
I don't want to go and insult it. I've insulted enough franchises tonight. You know, I mean, not really, but I mean, I've given some honest answers.
Not as bad. Not as bad as the Slug, though.
You know,
that
the
was
Cavaliers
a very
are not the Charlotte Bobcats. They are not. You know, they're nowhere near that level of incompetency that they have down there. You know, the Cavaliers are a well-run organization. They have a very good front office. You know, I really do like them. You know, they're not the Chicago Bulls. They're not the Los Angeles Lakers. You know, but they do have a very, you know, they are a well-respected front office and a well-respected ownership group. I will say that.
Well, and we'll watch what
Despite
John
what
Jenkins.
people might think.
Yeah, and
Despite what people might think.
we'll watch what John Jenkins and Danny Ferry and the Atlanta Hawks do over the next year and a half. See what they can do to you know, like you said, when you hit that perpetual mediocrity. I mean, that's doomed for a franchise. You know, go low,
I mean,
bottom
the Cavs
out, and
were
get
stuck
a
in that.
great
If you
player.
look at the Cavaliers, once the Brad Daugherty injury happened, you know, starting in '94, the Cavaliers became a 40 to 45 win team constantly every year, all the way until 1998. You know, until the '98 season was over, and that's when everything seemed to change. You know, with the Cavaliers. So, you know, just looking back on that, and they were stuck in mediocrity for a long time. And it was better. They were just terrible for a couple of years. You know, and they were able to land LeBron out of it. They were very, very fortunate that we had the first pick in the 2003 draft, and not a draft where they were drafting Michael Olo and Candy.
Yeah, that's a good.
Number one. You know, they were also very lucky at the same time to be even able to land the number one overall pick. But even they would have been still fortunate if they landed Carmelo Anthony or Dwayne Wade or even Chris Bosh in that draft. They would have been, you know, they would have been happy too. Obviously not as happy as LeBron, but you know, and here's another thing I'll say right now. As much as fans despise LeBron, he essentially saved the Cleveland Cavaliers franchise. Gordon Gunn was looking to move the team. They were last in attendance. You know, the Cavaliers drafted LeBron. They were suddenly selling out every game. Sold the team to Dan Gilbert. Gilbert he did a nice renovation on the arena. It wasn't a complete overhaul like he's planning in the next few years. But, you know, he did a nice job renovating the arena. You know, you would have never known that arena was 9 years old when Dan Gilbert took over that team. You know, now it looks like an arena that's probably built in the past, you know, around 8 to 10 years. You know, it doesn't look like it's a 20-year-old arena. He's done a nice job with it. He's done a nice job with the franchise, too, I really have to say.
So you're saying that Cleveland Cavaliers fans need to be thankful that LeBron saved the franchise?
I mean, I'm not saying you have to go up and thank
point.
LeBron. I'm just saying, though, overall, though, it was he essentially saved the franchise. You know, they were, like I said, they were having like 11,000 fans a game. You know, there were nights when it looked like there was no one even there. You know,
they're bad.
He helped basically revive Cleveland's love for basketball, if that's the thing. You know, I'm not going to go over and praise the guy because I don't like what he did, to the Cavaliers franchise. I can't stand what he did to the Cavs. But, I think it was just, he made a mockery of, free agency and everything. But that's a whole other story. We've gotten into that before. But, I could go on and on with this, and I just don't want to get into it right now because we've discussed it so many times before.
This is the day for hope.
Like I said, Cleveland was falling apart as a franchise. There was bad draft pick after bad draft pick, and finally they got something right.
Yeah, Gordon gunned. It was time for him to go. I just wish that the Cleveland Indians could trade hands so they could get a little bit of offense over there. But once again, that's probably another issue for another day as well. But this leads us up to number 24, Cleveland's pick with Jared Cunningham from Oregon State. We touched on it briefly earlier in the show.
He is going over to Dallas.
Yes.
Like I said, he's a Pac-12 player. He's another guy. He can score. I think Dallas in this draft was going completely for, it seemed like they were going for depth, and just some role players because they're starting to get older. They didn't go and try to draft a superstar. They didn't attempt to trade up. I don't know if Dallas is happy with their selections, but I don't think they can be too upset. They managed to have 3 picks tonight, in the first 34 picks.
Okay, well then what about Memphis over at 25? Tony, what is that, Roten?
Tony Roten Jr. from he's a guard from Washington. He's very turnover prone. That's the one thing I don't like about him. But playing behind Mike Conley, who's a very solid point guard, I think he can develop nicely over there. Not too much to say about him. But like I said again, he's a guy who can develop. He's going to develop slowly. He's very turnover prone. But I do like the pick over there for Washington.
Yeah, especially when you find a mentor to kind of, like you were saying, if Sullinger had gone to...
pick from Washington to Memphis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about like Sullinger going, you mentioned earlier, what if he were teamed up with Dwight Howard, and now it's like, okay, well, he's with Garnett, and like, when you find some mentors that can kind of get you going.
It sometimes just works, it's like, sometimes if a guy's willing to be in a mentoring role, it works out for the player. I'm not saying it always does because it doesn't. But, learning from KG and playing alongside Kevin Garnett next year for Jared Sullinger could be huge for him. It's like you always want to learn from the best. You don't want to learn from the worst.
Yeah, that is the truth. Now, what about Indiana? Indiana made a nice run against Miami in the playoffs. They pick up Miles Plumlee out of Duke. What are they getting there? I
feel that is the most typical Indiana pick they could have made.
Typical.
It's just like on paper when you talk about Indiana, it's taking the tall 7-foot white guy. It's just it's always how I've seen the roster with Troy, when they had Troy Murphy, Josh McRoberts. It's just a roster they've always been filled of the farm type white guy. I don't know what to say. I hate saying this, but it was just such a typical pick. I expected Plumlee to go early to mid-second round. I think it was a little high for him. I think they reached a little bit.
No, they didn't reach. He was the highest available 7-foot white guy available at the time. So they obviously his picture on ESPN is hilarious. He's like making this face. It looks like a bit of a goober. I don't know the man, but
so like I said, he's just going to provide some bench quality minutes. That's it. He's never going to be a starter in this league.
And then that's the 27 pick with Miami, Arnett, and then they
We've already discussed this one. I love the pick there, from Mississippi State. I definitely thought he was going to go higher. I thought he could have gone as high as 11, but he didn't. I think Miami got really good value and they traded him to Philly. But I love the pick. I love that pick. I think he's a great player.
They're anticipating that in the future, Philly is going to give them a higher draft pick than 27, and maybe is that what Miami's doing?
I think they assume that. Here's the thing: if it's unprotected. I don't know. They haven't said whether it's protected yet or not. I assume it isn't because Miami made the deal right then. But if let's say, Philly's not going to win 10 games next year. They're most likely going to be a playoff team or a borderline playoff team. It's not going to turn into the number 1 overall pick anyways. So I wouldn't be too concerned. But I think Miami realized they go, what? I don't know if a rookie can really help us right here. Let's go out. We can use the mid-level and sign some veteran minimum free agents. We'll be just fine. We're going to put together a very similar roster than we did last year. We won the championship with it. If we can add a piece like Ray Allen or maybe a Chris Kaman type, we'll be just fine.
By the way, what are you hearing? What do you think's going on with Mike Miller? Is he going to come back?
I really don't know. If I were the Heat, and he decides to come back, I think you have to look at using the amnesty clause on him just to get under the luxury tax. Because Mike Miller, when Mike Miller's healthy, he's not horrible. That's why they signed him for $5.5 million a year because he was a good player at one point. Don't forget, if the Cavaliers re-signed LeBron, Mike Miller would have been a Cavalier and not a member of the Miami Heat. I can almost bank on it right now.
Yeah.
And Mike Miller, and then people have been going, oh, we've got Mike Miller's contract too.
Well, they were trying to pick up Mike Miller during a couple of those runs. You always heard his name mentioned. Oh, are they going to go get Miller? Are they going to get Mike Miller? Never worked out.
Yeah.
But.
So no, but and they made the Cavaliers were very high on Mike Miller for a long time. But I really don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know what Pat Riley's thinking. I think Mike Miller probably might retire, but it's hard to walk away from $15 million left on a contract. He might see first if they're going to amnesty him, and if they don't, then maybe he'll retire.
Yeah, see, I'm wondering if there's a way that he might get bought out outside. I know it's not legal.
Well, that's the thing, that Miami could work out a buyout option, but and that would keep him from the luxury tax.
Yeah,
but
just so they can add
him.
another piece. If they could add another piece, even if they still pay him off the books, if you know what I mean, or.
No, you cannot do that. It happened to the Minnesota Timberwolves a long time ago, where they tried to do that with Isaiah Ryder and pay him under the table, and they lost tons of picks because of it.
Well, I mean,
the
it's
NBA
not
knows everyone's books. Believe me, the NBA, they're on that. It's not that cannot happen. People are always wondering, like, why don't you give LeBron $10 million a year and sneak him $5 million underneath the table? You can't do that. People will find out about it. People are bound to. You cannot do that. It is highly illegal.
Weren't they saying that
multiple draft pick penalties? It is. It happened with Isaiah Ryder. If you ever have a chance to read on that story, look it up. It happened with Minnesota a while back, back in the early '90s.
Well, wasn't there I loved Isaiah Ryder back then. He was one of the players I played basketball all the time. I don't know what I would compare my game to. I guess I was really big into the rebounds and the screens and mid-range shot, the drives where they were available. I was a little bit of everything when I played. Obviously not a 7-footer, but I was an okay player. We won our intramural championship. But yeah, Isaiah Ryder was one of my favorite players.
He was a good player. He just had, like I said, multiple off-the-court issues.
Absolutely, a character thing once again. But, I know that's the case. I know you can't do that. But also, Pat Riley wasn't supposed to be negotiating with Chris Bosh and LeBron James, having the meetings that they had, like they had when he was under contract. And there was a lot of suspicious stuff and a lot of
It's over now, though. The NBA, did an investigation to it. Obviously, I mean, who knows? Some people go, Dan Gilbert kept quiet about it after he got the number 1 overall pick. I tend to, I honestly don't know what really happened.
Wait a minute. Let me put those two things together. Hang on a second. Okay, because I don't know that I really pieced together Gilbert stopped making a stink and he got the number 1 pick. And then this year, Jim Rome asking the question of David Stern, well, did you give him the number 1 pick? If
the lottery was rigged, he would have gone. Anthony Davis would have been going to Brooklyn, and LeBron would have gone to the Knicks. Essentially, the NBA, David Stern loves the big markets performing well. The NBA is not. The NBA draft, I can tell you, the lottery is not rigged. As far as I know, granted, some other people might think it's rigged. I do not believe it's rigged. People can believe all they want. I don't.
That's fair enough.
I believe the reffing. I believe the reffing is sometimes a little biased. Actually, heavily sometimes. But I do not believe the NBA draft lottery is rigged. I'm completely against that.
Okay, Oklahoma City at 28. Perry Jones out of Baylor. What's his deal?
Love the Perry Jones pick. We're talking about a guy last year who was projected early lottery, and then going into this year, going into this season was a projected top 5 pick again.
And then?
If you looked at early mock drafts, and you were looking, how is this guy on paper, not going to be a top 5 pick? He has unbelievable potential. And then you just watch him during games, and he's there sometimes, he's not there. Sometimes you don't hear his name called for both halves, and you're just like, whatever. But again, I know it's another scenario. He's going to a team which is a bunch of hard workers. He's going to provide valuable minutes off the bench. I don't know about right away, but he could be a nice fit there, especially behind Serge Ibaka and Kevin Durant. Especially, he adds the 3 and the 4 position. I think it's a really nice fit for Oklahoma City and another fantastic value pick there.
And then number 29, the Bulls. I mean, obviously after the Derrick Rose injury, they're trying
love
to
the Marcus Teague pick. I thought they were going to take Tyshawn Taylor all along because I wasn't a Tyshawn Taylor fan. I really not. But Marcus Teague, I was expecting to be off the board a few picks earlier. I could have seen him going to Miami or something. I was not expecting Teague to be on the board. And, he was. I think Marcus Teague, he's going to be a lot like his brother Jeff on the Atlanta Hawks. So, again, I see that as another good pick by the Bulls, and they need a point guard, with Derrick Rose being out for a little while. I love the pick. I love the Marcus Teague pick. I really do.
And with the number 30 pick in the 2012 NBA Draft, the last pick of the first round, Golden State, what do you think of Festus Ezeli out of Vanderbilt?
Again, he's a center. Like I said, when you're drafting a center at 30, he's not going to be putting up much production. He doesn't have a high ceiling. He's one of those guys that you might see playing 5-6 minutes a night. He's just there as a hustle player at the end of games who can come in for a few minutes.
So basically the answer there is a lot of
Like, I'm going to say this right now. I feel all the centers in this draft, centers normally, they're picked way higher than their value would indicate. And, like a guy like Drummond with his college production would have never been a top 10 pick. But, centers, there aren't a lot of great centers nowadays, and teams are always trying to reach for that great next center. Or, teams are always drafting for size because it's so hard to find nowadays in the NBA. A player who, has size and is actually a valuable player. So that's why teams, Myers Leonard, in my opinion, in normal game, is not a top 10 pick, top 11 pick. That's just how I feel, and I feel these centers were all reached for. But I think Zeller, I do like the Zeller pick for the Cavs. Like I said, I still had him above Myers Leonard. So I think Tyler Zeller is going to be overly productive in the NBA. No, I don't see him as an all-star center, but I see him as a guy who will be able to produce and is a nice fit with the Cavs who can help run the floor.
We are talking with NBA scout and lifelong Cleveland sports fan Zak Baris. Zach, I think we are going to take a brief moment here. We're going to hit reset, and we're going to briefly just kind of do a little bit of free agency overview. Just kind of talk, all right, now the draft is going. We're into the second round. You're getting some pieces. You're getting some projects, maybe some Europeans. Okay, fine. But moving forward, if there are any particular post-draft trades, anything especially for the Cleveland Cavaliers, if there's anything free agent-wise or any extra trades that they might be able to do to improve their roster, if there's anything going through the grapevine slowly, let me just hit refresh on this here for a second. We're going to do a brief station identification break here on the TNAM radio network. If you're listening to us after the fact, please click subscribe on the YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
You were listening to the Unhappy Hour Sports Radio Show on the NewAmericanMedia.com.
And we are back with NBA scout Zak Baris. Zach, we've kind of wrapped up picks 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and 21 through 30. And moving forward now, I mean, we got a lot of unresolved issues here going around the league. I mean, obviously, we kind of touched on Dwight Howard. We're hearing Pau Gasol trade talks. The Rockets were trying
I think the Lakers are going to be the most this is just coming. I think the Lakers are probably going to turn into the most active team in the next couple of weeks. I think they're really looking, because if you look at their current roster, the way it's structured right now, the Lakers have no chance of beating Oklahoma City next year. They have no chance of beating Miami right now. If I'm the Lakers, I start exploring, do you start exploring maybe a Pau Gasol for Josh Smith trade, get involved in those talks right now. Josh Smith is younger, a little more athletic, but Pau Gasol is a better player in my opinion. And then you go and try to swing an Andrew Bynum for Dwight Howard trade. Would that work out?
Huh.
And then you can wind up with with Josh Smith and Dwight Howard in your front court, two best friends. It's a complete overhaul. You're getting considerably younger with Josh Smith. And I think that could be a great fit for the Lakers. I expect the Lakers to be active in trade talks. They will not be active in free agency. But trade talks, I look for them to try to move Gasol. And I think they'd be open to moving Bynum over the next couple weeks, especially if it's for Dwight Howard.
That is a lot of movement.
Looking at the Cavaliers, because I know, this is basically a Cleveland sports talk show. The Cavaliers, I think they're going to try to attempt some trades. I don't know what they're willing to take on. I think players are going to look at in free agency. I think they're going to have to take a look at Brandon Roy becoming available, because they definitely need a guy on the wing. I think Roy would provide some veteran leadership who could play 20 minutes a game. It depends how his knee is. But, I could also see him being a fit in Minnesota. It just depends where Brandon Roy wants to play, whether he really wants to come and try to win a ring. But as I'm understanding right now, the Lakers aren't too interested in Brandon Roy, is what I'm hearing as of yesterday. So, the Cavaliers could look at him. Another guy the Cavaliers are very high on, I think they've been high on for a while, is Omar Sheik from the Chicago Bulls, who, in my opinion, once his PR is very high, or his player efficiency rating, is very, very high. He doesn't get a ton of minutes because he's playing with Noah in the front court, and Boozer. But when he's on the floor, he's incredibly productive. I think he'd be a great fit. If the Cavaliers could try to trade Anderson Varejao and sign Omar Sheik, I think it'd be an incredible signing for the Cavs, especially if they could get something for Varejao. It's, basically a 2-for-1.
Let me ask you this, unrelated to what may or may not happen in some future trades. Will Anthony Davis ever shave the unibrow?
No, he's trademarked it. That is his trademark. He's going to make millions of dollars off of that unibrow. He will never shave it.
Hang on, explain this. So like there will be jerseys and shoes that have like the
He's
Batman
trademarked.
logo.
He trademarked. I don't know if you watched the beginning of the draft tonight, but as if the other day, he went and invited his agents and his parents. They advised that he trademark all the unibrows. Fear the brow. And those are all. He's trademarked all of those. Those are all his now. And if someone wants to use the slogan now, they have to pay him. He's going to make a lot of money off of that. I can tell you right now, especially with people wearing, now people wear the masks down in New Orleans, basically, the voodoo masks or anything, or, the Mardi Gras mask. People are just going to put unibrows on those things. It's going to look pretty funny, but, I think it's a great marketing campaign for him, although it makes him a lot uglier than he would be without it. It's a great marketing campaign. I think he knows that.
So they could do like the unibrow giveaway night. The first 20,000 fans get the unibrow like eyeglasses or something that attached to your face, and
his mom even wore it during a game last year during the NCAA tournament. The unibrow mask.
All right, well there we go. What are you gonna do? There it is. I mean, you got to be known for something. Might as well be known for the unibrow and the number 1 pick. Let's see if he can bring some championships home, I guess. But I think New Orleans is in a good fit. I don't think they're going to do much in free agency other than attempt to sign Eric Gordon. I don't know if they're going to go all the way for a max deal for him. I think he's a very risky choice to sign for a max deal. Obviously, you won't see the Cavaliers going after him after they drafted Deion Waiters or the same position. But like I said, the Cavaliers still have a major hole at small forward. Right now they've got Alonzo G and Omri Caspi. And G's more of a 2-guard coming off the bench than he is a 3, but can play the 3, pretty well. And Caspi, I do like Omri Caspi, but he did not produce last year with the Cavs. Let's see what he does in his second year over there. Kyrie, I expect big-time development from Kyrie, especially because the Cavaliers will definitely be more talented than they were a year ago. I expect Tristan Thompson to move up in his step. Don't forget the Cavaliers were a borderline 8 seed last year with a healthy Varejao. I expect them to be a lot better this year. What's going on with Jeremy Lin, too? Just to, I haven't heard a Lin update.
Oh, with the bird rights, everything going on there. Well, a final decision, the NBA is waiting to, this could technically stop free agency. If the NBA files an appeal to this case, there could be a stoppage to free agency, and free agency could start a few days late if that's the scenario, which could possibly happen. I'm not saying it will, but it could possibly happen.
What's the gut instinct?
Jeremy Lin is another one of those players. If he's in a run it system, where they run the floor real hard, he's a great fit. He can get to the hoop. He's a good passer, but he is a turnover machine. He needs to cut down on the turnovers. But I do like Jeremy Lin. For his first significant playing time in the league, he did an excellent job last year. He's exciting to watch too, and the media love the guy. He's a great story. He's one of those stories. You're talking about a guy. He's got a Harvard education behind his belt. He has, he's smart. He's a good person in the community. That's who the fans need to get behind anyways. Stop respecting these players who are going out getting constant DUIs, getting in trouble, or, for dog fighting, whatever, a.k.a. Michael Vick. Respect a guy who has done well in the community and is a good person who's very intelligent. Those are role models. Jeremy Lin is an actual role model. He's a guy you can look up to.
Well, I liked his clutch gene. I liked the fact that he was just lighting it up, taking those last-minute shots. It was just, I watched it from a distance and then at arm's length, and then I'm like, I'm in. This is awesome. This kid is just balling right now.
Yeah, and exactly. I'll give one more little piece here. Is I'll say the teams that have a that are probably going to have very very interesting offseasons. The Chicago Bulls. What do you do? Who do you try to sign with Derrick Rose being out? What about Rip Hamilton? Do you make a move for Steve Nash? Do you amnesty Carlos Boozer or attempt to trade him? Do you try to pull a Dwight Howard trade, get rid of Joakim Noah? Do you re-sign Omar Sheik? Their roster has a ton of questions right now, not holes, but question marks. The Indiana Pacers, are they going to be able to re-sign Roy Hibbert? Yes, they have a ton of cap room. It just depends. Someone could way overpay for him, which they might not try to match. Do they go out and attempt to sign Eric Gordon because they have a ton of cap room? There's just some interesting. The Minnesota Timberwolves are also an interesting team. Is Rubio going to be healthy next year? They just traded for Chase Budinger. And obviously they dangled Derek Williams today in trade talks with the Charlotte Bobcats. What are they going to do? That's another interesting team. They're a team on the rise. It's definitely going to be an interesting offseason, and you have to look to see. I think Deron Williams at this point will probably now return to Brooklyn. I'm not saying it will happen, but if I was going, I'd probably say 65% he returns to Brooklyn, 35%, goes to the Dallas Mavericks. But he'll wind up on one of those two teams.
And in the remaining 30 seconds we have left, Zach, when do we start to expect to see all these dominoes start to move?
Within the next 2 weeks.
Well, good. Then we'll have a little bit more time to continue this.
I think Deron Williams will determine a lot. I think when he signs, that'll determine where everybody will start going in free agency, because then you'll know where Nash is going. You'll know where all these guys will start playing. Will the Nets be able to swing at the Dwight Howard trade? It all depends. Or if Deron Williams goes to Dallas. I think, like I said, I think that determines a lot what's going to happen. In free agency, I think it's going to cause a lot of teams to just hit the hold button until he makes a move or someone. Because he's really the only true prominent free agent at this point in this class.
Well, and it's a lot like you said leading up to this draft. A lot's going to hinge on pick number 2, and then all the pieces are going to start to fall into place. But until you sort that out, you're not going to know where to go. But we are out of time right now. So Zach, this is the culmination. This is the stuff you do. You were out at the combine. You were grading these players. You were watching everything. So this is your time to shine, pal. We appreciate you being a part of the program again, and we look forward to continuing to speak with you. I guess we'll take tomorrow off, and then maybe the following week we'll kind of do a recap once everything settles in and we get some more stories funneling regarding some of these trade options. Sound like a plan?
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, hey, sure thing. That is Zak Baris, lifelong Cleveland sports fan and NBA scout. You can find him on Twitter at @ZBaris, Baris. Thank you very much. My name is Brian Engelman. This has been the Unhappy Hour Special Edition on the NewAmericanMedia.com, talking NBA Draft. Good times, good times. Thanks a lot, everybody.